Kiddos, welcome back to my channel. My name is Becca. This is Murder Monday. You're amazing. And today we are not talking about a murder. We're not even really talking about a true crime case. I took a poll on my Instagram and, oh, you can see I'm watching American Horror Story over there. I took a poll on Instagram between two different cases, and this is the one that won. And the reason I wanted to talk about it is because not a lot of people know her story, but everybody knows her. They think that they know as much as you can know about this person, but really her life, her career was pretty awful, actually. So today we are setting aside some true crime. We are picking up a celebrity, talking about Shirley Temple.
Wear a smile, sing a little while it's raining. Every Joe, every Jane walks along that dreamer's lane on Fifth Avenue.
Shirley Jane Temple was born in Santa Monica, California, April 23rd, 1928, to George Francis, her father, who was a banker and would later become her financial manager, and her mother, Gertrude, who would become her manager. She had two older brothers, John and George Jr., and they lived a pretty quiet life for the most part. A year after she was born, the Great Depression started, but that didn't stop her family. Her mom put her into singing and dance classes. It was at the school that she was spotted by Charles Lamont, a casting director for educational pictures. And he signed her to a contract in 1932, where she was signed on to perform in her first film, Baby Burlesque. This is one of the reasons why I wanted to talk about this. Baby Burlesque was a super popular show. They're like 10-minute short comedies that were directed to adult men. It's kind of the audience that these pictures were directed to. Well, what were they? What was this Baby Burlesque? Well, Baby Burlesque were stories about strippers and prostitutes who worked in a brothel and sold their services to incoming US GIs. All of them were toddlers. Shirley Temple was a stripper and a prostitute in this show, where she would dance for lollipops instead of money, and the sexual act was kisses. So she delivered lines like, I'm very expensive, she sold affection for lollipops, and she danced for the eyes of the other soldiers, who were like 3 years old. And there was a bunch of these.
How do you like my baby? No, I got a red and potato. You said it, boy. Come here, now. I got a present for you. Me, monsieur. Yeah, wait, just wait. Boy, she's hot stuff. All right, baby. Absolutely no copy time. Hey, bartender! What is it, baby? More. Gee, would you think I expensive? Here's the last one. Now I'm broke. Then I guess it's just me and my baby, huh? Hey, where did you get that short baby stuff? It's my gal. Says you. You says me. And we'll settle this right now. Come on, baby. Choose between us. Listen, baby, I gotta go now. Now you be good until I get back. Stay away from that cloud, birds have squirts. He's a snake in the ground. May we, Monsieur Cuppy, come? Okay, baby. Where's you been? Let him sing goodbye to my baby. Oh, yeah, your baby. Says you. Yeah, says me.
shitty things about Baby Burlesque, and maybe this happened with all films that were using really, really young actors, was they were viciously strict with all of the children. Time is money. If they misbehaved, they were locked in a windowless, dark room and forced to sit in there. It was called the punishment box, and they were forced to sit on a block of ice until they decided to behave. Unfortunately, Shirley Temple spent a lot of time in that box. I mean, she was 3. They didn't care about the well-being of the child at all. They were meant to do as many movies as they could, as quickly as they could, back to back to back, because they wanted to bank on the youthful appearance of the actor or actress, or Shirley Temple in this story. One time, Shirley Temple was meant to perform right after having a little procedure because she had to have her eardrum lanced and she had to dance a really badly injured foot. After the success of her first couple of films, her mother realized that she was not getting paid enough money for her time. She was only getting $150 a week, so they hired a lawyer, they went and renegotiated, and that all got increased. Her weekly allowance went from $150 to $1,000 a week. Her mother got an allowance of $250 a week with a $15,000 bonus per film completed. Now, the economic value of $150 during the Great Depression was $18,500. The boost from $150 to $1,000 took her from, the economic value of $18,500 to $123,000 a week. And the $15,000 bonus per movie completed, $1.85 million in a time where a quarter could buy an entire meal. They weren't just rich, they were rich! December 28th, 1934, Bright Eyes was Temple's first role that was designed specifically for her. It had her signature song, The Good Ship Lollipop. And that song sold 500,000 copies of sheet music. In 1935, she was honored with her first tiny little juvenile Oscar, and she added her signature and her footprints to Grauman's Chinese Theater in Hollywood. At the age of 12, she was signed to MGM Studios. This was the type of studio that would run their child actors into the ground. They would make film after film after film, back to back to back, with little to no rest, in order to make as much money as possible off of their youthful appearance. However, this is not the only way that they would abuse their actors and actresses. Shirley Temple wrote in her biography that she met one of the executives of the studio, Arthur Freed. Arthur had a private meeting with Shirley. He invited her into his office, unzipped his pants, pulled out his dick, and told Shirley that he had something made just for her. At 12 years old, Shirley giggled and he threw her out of his office. Anita Colby was the artistic director for David O. Schlesnick, who is the director of Gone with the Wind. She warned Shirley to be careful that if she was ever in his office and he was in stocking feet, to get out of there. Temple writes in her biography that she was under the impression that casual sex was a part of the contract. Unfortunately, Shirley had to deal with this when she was 17 years old. One meeting, while Shirley Temple was in David's office, he came around to her side of the desk and grabbed her hand. This is when she noticed that he was in stocking feet. Fearing what he was expecting of her, she got up and ran for the door. This is when he flipped a switch on the desk, which locked the door, trapping her inside, and he literally chased her around the office, expecting his due as her boss. In her autobiography, she calls it sexual clumsiness. So there are also some reports that talk about the attempted rape of Shirley Temple. So I guess if you really want to, you can use your imagination as to what happened in that office. In her brief film career, Shirley Temple was forced to fight off the sexual advances of men throughout the entire time she was in the film industry. She was groped and grabbed and assaulted and threatened. After telling one Hollywood executive no, he told her that he's going to be a big deal, so they're going to have to just get along. What he had in mind was just a workplace formality. Another man called the Wizard said, "Sex is like water. When you're thirsty, you drink. When you want sex, you have it." Again, this is all talking to someone who's in her mid-teens. Once a comedian, George Jessel, who invited her to his dressing room to discuss an upcoming role. Once she was in his room, they were a few feet apart. They were facing each other, and in one swift movement, he unzipped his pants, pulled his junk out, and grabbed her in close. And she was shocked. She had just gotten over the assault with the wizard, and now she's being assaulted again. She just couldn't believe it, and she kneed him in the groin and took off running. She was starting to see that the film industry was full of, she called them tomcats. I call them criminals and perverts. Then in the 1990s, there was a very popular author, Graham Greene. He wrote an article talking about Shirley, couldn't have been older than 8 when this happened. Her neat and well-developed rump twisted in the tap dance, talking about her role in Captain January. Then in 37, when he was reviewing her role in Wee Willie Winkie, while wearing short skirts, she's a complete totsy. Watch the way she measures a man with agile studio eyes, dimpled depravity, adult emotion, love and grief, sayed across the mask of childhood. Childhood only skin deep. He goes on and on and on talking about her like this, saying things like, admires middle-aged men and clergy, respond to her well-shaped and desirable little body, only because a safety curtain of story and dialogue dips between their intelligence and their desire. Talking about how sexy she is. Thank God she's on TV and there's this story here so that we can swoon over this fucking 8-year-old and no one cares. Well, Shirley and her family cared, and in the end they got their word and MGM sued him and they won. Another bizarre thing that she had to deal with was one woman thought that Shirley had stolen her daughter's soul, and the only way to get her daughter's soul back was to assassinate Shirley Temple. Obviously, she was unsuccessful at the assassination. There's also a ton of rumors that surrounded this little girl. A lot of people thought that she was really a full-grown person and was a midget because she never aged. They never saw her with any missing teeth, but that's because they forced her to wear caps, and they forced her to do all of these treatments and all of these things to maintain her youthful appearance. And her hair, which was her trademark, the little gold ringlets, people thought it was a wig, so every time she would go out in public, her fans and stuff would pull her hair to see if it was real. When she was 17, she got married to John Agar, who is a low-grade horror movie actor. He was also a raging alcoholic and super abusive. The marriage only lasts 5 years before they got divorced. As a child, she was an avid reader, and she loved the story of The Wizard of Oz. And she was actually in the running to be Dorothy, but they told her she was too fat. And they went with Judy Garland, which is probably a good thing because Judy Garland had it fucking rough on that filming. She wasn't really allowed to eat. She could only smoke cigarettes and drink coffee, and she was routinely groped by the studio head, Louis Mayer. He would come up and he was always grabbing her left boob, telling her that she sung from the heart. Ugh. Shirley Temple did have a drink named after her. It's Sprite, grenadine, and Mendocino cherry, which ironically she didn't like the drink. She was familiar with the Roosevelts. She chewed gum with Amelia Earhart. She sat in J. Edgar Hoover's lap. Like, she was a big fucking deal back then. At 45, she was 17. Her gold hair had turned brown. She had almost no appeal at all. And by 22, her desirability to studios had almost completely vanished. She no longer looked like a little kid. Her divorce made her seem like more of an adult to society. She wasn't the cute little kid anymore. She was an adult. And in 1950, she retired from the film industry. That same year, she met a man, Charles Alden Black. They knew each other for 12 days before getting married, and they were married for 55 years until her husband died in 2005. One of the really shitty things about all of that is if you can do the math in your head, if she was making $1 million+ a movie, and she did back-to-back movies, she should have a crap ton of money, right? Wrong. See, her father, who was her financial manager, was supposed to put all of her money into a trust that she was going to be able to have access to when she turned 18. That was why she was getting $1,000 a week to exist. She was getting that money to live off of, so the rest of it could go into her trust. She could have it when she turned 18. Well, her dad didn't put any of it into her savings account. He spent all of it on himself, lost all of it, and when she retired from the film industry after everything that she had been through, she had $44,000 to her name. In 72, Temple was diagnosed with breast cancer, and she had to have modified radical mastectomy done on herself. And back then, cancer was very hush-hush. Nobody talked about it. It was an embarrassing thing. Nobody discussed it. She was very open with it in the media. She was very open with it on TV. This was the first time that there was really a lot of attention paid towards breast cancer, and she kind of started the breast cancer awareness movement. And at 85 in February of 2014, in her home in Woodside, California, which is actually really close to where my parents live, she died from COPD. Temple was a lifelong chain smoker, but you never saw that because she didn't want anyone to know that she was a smoker because she thought that it was a bad influence on her fans. All right, guys, that is the depressing story of Shirley Temple. See, Shirley Temple's kind of a big deal in my house. My mom, whose name is Shirley, loves Shirley Temple. So you would think that everybody in the family knows about her story. Well, I was talking about this video with my dad, telling him all of this, and he goes, wow, I didn't know any of that. That's really sad. And it is really sad. Back in those days, things were different. You know, women weren't treated the same way that they are now. Children were treated even worse, especially in the film industry. And she is one of the rare ones. She got out of she was a massive, huge mega star, but she managed to survive her fame. With a lot of celebrities, you know, you get them and they just go nuts when they turn into teenagers, and they always end up dying of overdose or something, doing porn, something, you know. Being a child actor plays a big toll on the people involved. Look at Britney Spears, look at Miley Cyrus, look at Justin Bieber. You know, look at Drew Barrymore. You can't really point at too many people who have come from being tiny, tiny kids up into adults who haven't gone through some weird phase. I think Shirley Temple and Hilary Duff are probably the only two that were able to make it out of being a childhood star with no scars. Let me know what you think in the comments. Let me know what you think about child actors in general. Do you think that there's something about that life, or what do you think it is about that life that makes them go crazy, or that makes people think they can do whatever they want to do? I love you guys so much. As always, there is a link to my Linktree link in the description box, which has all of my social media and all of my stuff in there. Also, I am working with To Hunt a Killer right now. 20% off when you enter Black Cherry at checkout. I'm so excited to do this next case. You get evidence, and you get case files, and you get CDs and flash drives and audio files, and you get all of this stuff and all of this evidence, and it's your job to figure out who the murderer is. There's like a Facebook channel that you can go on and talk with people. There's YouTube videos. There's this big community of it. But what I really like about it is it's not TV. It's not expensive, so I'm not spending $100 to go to the movie theater or $200 to go to the bar. My husband and I stay home, crack open a bottle of wine, and we can hunt a killer, and that could be our date night. And what's cool is a case lasts 6 months, so every month you get additional information for this case. I'm super excited. If you do it, if you order your box, let me know. A couple of you have already done it. Let me know what case you got, and maybe we can try and catch this killer together. All right, guys, I love you so much. Stay weird. I will see you next time. And remember that none of us are saints, and you're like my bestest friends, and I love you so much. Okay, bye.